Hi, I'm Kevin Hatley and welcome to Kevin Hatley Photography in my office. This is a channel that I've set up to share my experiences of wildlife and nature with others. So let's go. If you were walking past a freshwater feature and you were to hear this noise, no, it's not an escaped piglet running for its life. It's actually one of the UK's shyest and most elusive birds, the water rail. Although it's relatively common, as I've said, the water rail is a very shy and a very elusive bird. Often heard and very seldom seen. The environment that they live in makes it pretty difficult from a photography point of view to get good shots of the water rail. So what I want to do in this video is share with you my approach to photographing the water rail. And what we'll do is we'll have a brief look at the rail family, how to identify the water rail, we'll look at some of its behaviour, as I said, my approach to photographing the water rail, and I'll also share some tips and interesting facts about water rails along the way. Okay, what I want to do now is go through the identification of the water rail. The water rail family in the UK consists of two subspecies. There's the rails, which is the water rail, the moorhen and the coot, and we'll look at them. We'll look at the moorhen and the coot very briefly before we concentrate on the main target, the water rail. The other subfamily is the crake family, which consists of the concrete and the spotted crake, and I'm not going to deal with them in this video. I'm only going to deal with the rail family, as I said, and mainly the water rail. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the rail family very briefly before we move on to the water rail. Both the moorhen and the coot can be found on virtually any piece of freshwater featured here in the UK. The moorhen is a black and brown coloured feathered bird. It's got a red eye, red and yellow beak, it's got a white rump, and it's got long green legs. We then look at the coot. The coot is an all black bird with a white shield above its white bill, hence the phrase bald as a coot, and it also has a red eye and long yellow and grey legs and feet. Okay, moving on to the star of the show, the water rail. Water rails, to identify them, they're smaller than a moorhen. They have a chestnut brown and black upper parts, a grey face and underparts, got black and white barred flanks, and a very long red bill. And again, red eyes and pale pink legs. One interesting fact to note about the water rail, it has a very slim profile on the bird, which helps them move through dense cover, as you'll see. When it comes to telling the difference between a male and a female water rail, it's very difficult, and unless you really see them side by side, it's very difficult, as I say, to tell the difference. But in general, as I said, they're very similar, but the female is slightly smaller than the male, and it also has a shorter bill, and the markings tend to be not as bright as they are on the male. Juvenile water rails have a duller plumage all over, and they have a white chin. Okay, tip number 5 in how to photograph the water rail. It's all about knowing your subject. I believe the more that you know and you understand about wildlife, the better you increase your chances of getting closer to them and getting the images of difficult subjects like water rails. So you've really got to know your subject. The fact that you're watching this video on YouTube is part of that, and hopefully you do learn something from this. Water rails prefer running to flying, and they will normally only swim short distances, and they will always keep close to cover. When it comes to the water rail's call, there are basically two. There's the one that we heard at the beginning, which is the alarm. It's an unmistakable pig-like call. It's like a squealing pig. Once you've heard it once, you'll never forget it. The other call is a contact call, which is more like a keep, 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 and I'll show you both calls in a second or two. They do emit a wide range of unlikely squeals, grunts and groans, as I said, ranging from squealing pigs to sometimes purring-like squirrels. When it comes to the water rail's diet, they're omnivorous. They will eat small fish and amphibians, snails, insects. They feed mainly in shallow water, on the edges of lakes and on ponds. That leads me into tip number 4, which is all to do about feeder stations. You'll normally find, or I found, and certainly in the area where I am, I know of at least 3 places where water rails will come to feeder stations where people are feeding things like the ducks, etc., on the ponds and the lakes. And that's especially true in winter, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. So if you find a feeder station on a water feature, which is visited regularly by people feeding ducks, etc., and there's lots of reeds and that around about it, the chances are you could get a water rail if you're patient, and that's another story. So tip number 4 is look for a feeder station where you could possibly get a good close-up of a water rail. Okay, the $50,000 question, where are you going to find water rails? Well, as we've seen, they're very shy and an elusive bird, and they're very difficult to see in the breeding season. They're relatively easier to see in the winter if you know where to look, and as I've said before, you more often than not hear them before you actually see them. So where are you going to find them? Well, places to look out for water rails are places like any freshwater wetland. Tends to be the main habitat, living in and around reed beds, hiding in the vegetation. Nature reserves are a good place. A lot of RSPB reserves around. Just check the website for latest sightings. As I mentioned before, feeder stations, which are near water, are excellent, especially in the winter. Because as you find in the winter, as the vegetation dies back, food becomes scarcer for the water rails, and that can at times bring them out of the cover. And show you some clips of the type of environment that the water rail live in and survive in. That then leads me on to tip number 3, and how to photograph water rails, and that's to do with nature reserves. There are a number of nature reserves in and around my area. I'm always checking sightings to see if they've been seen and they're about. And that's the way to get close to them. And they will come close to hides at time. So tip number 3, nature reserves. Okay, I just want to take a little time out from this video for a second or two, just to give you a look forward to a current video project that I'm working on at the moment on wildlife photography, and that's how to photograph wildlife from hides. Certainly in the case of the water rail, I've had to use hides to get close to the water rail. Hides from on a nature reserve to my own little pop-up hide. So I look forward to wildlife photography and how to use hides from Kevin Hatley Photography. Moving on to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is all about winter. The water rail population in the UK increases virtually every year in winter, and you stand a better chance of seeing water rails. And as I said previously, in winter when the bankside vegetation has eroded. Water rails tend to move to small ponds and even ditches nearer to human habitation in winter also. I've got a local lake where each winter the water rail population does increase. Okay, so as I'm sure you can see from the video, that the environment that the water rail lives in and it survives in doesn't really lead itself to an easy route for the photographer to get the pictures that they want. Just show you some very short clips of the type of issues that you can have. As we've said, they're very shy, they're very elusive. He's out again. He's in again. When it comes to camera settings, water rails very seldom do they stand still. The only time they'll really stand still is if they get spooked, and what they'll actually do is they'll freeze, and they'll freeze for a couple of seconds and then they're off like a rocket. So I have a go-to set of settings, and depending on the light will depend on how I will change. Probably the only thing that would change would be the shutter speed. So my go-to settings on my Canon R5 and RF 100 to 500 are f7.1 to f8, 7.1 being the largest aperture on the RF 100 to 500, 1/1000th of a second, and auto ISO. I always shoot in auto ISO for all my wildlife photography. That leads me on to tip number 1, which is patience. I can't underestimate that you need real patience when trying to photograph water rail, due to the environment they live in, the challenges that provides, and it's a very skittish bird, a very skittish behaviour, very shy, very elusive. You need to keep concentrated, or you could miss any opportunities that may arise at that time to get the images that you're after. So all I'd like to do now is leave you with some of my favourite images of the water rail, and I hope that you enjoy them. Thanks for watching this edition of Kevin Hatley Photography and how to photograph the water rail. I'm sure you can see that it is quite a challenging bird to photograph, and it's a unique bird. Everything from its shape, its size, its colour, to its incredible alarm call that once you've heard it, you'll never forget it. I certainly won't. All I would ask is that if you've liked the video, could you hit the like button? Could I also ask you, if you've not already done so, to consider subscribing to my channel, Kevin Hatley Photography. It just keeps giving me that incentive to keep coming out or going out into the countryside, photographing my projects. I learn. Every time I do one of these videos, I learn. And I like to be able to learn and then share the experience and the knowledge that I've learned with others through Kevin Hatley Photography. So until the next time, stay safe, take care, and I hope to see you soon. Bye for now.